today I have taken two famous traditional quotes from well-known, respected business leaders and smashed them together into a new idea. So first quote is from Mr. Harley Davidson himself, who said that when your story is written, make sure you're holding the pen, be in control of your process, and prepare to tell people what you're all about. Do not be afraid to profess what it is you're trying to achieve and how you're the person to do it. The second quote is from Mr. Henry Ford, who said, if you believe in you can or cannot do something, you're correct. Because of course, confidence and an attitude of success are the things that make you start a process. The only way to be successful is to start. You also have to be open and willing to understand that the process won't go as planned and that you have to take any negative feedback along the way and fold that back into how you move forward. I take these two ideas along with a little bit of Maya Angelou and some things I learned from Hamilton, the play, about famous historical figures and thinkers, and create the idea behind self-brand or branding for 2020. So please go check out the podcast today for the full details on how this all goes together. It's on Spotify, it's on Google Play, the Anchor app, iTunes, of course, and on YouTube. So check out the podcast and then make a comment below. Let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree, things you want to hear more of, etc. Anything that you would need as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a self-brand, to talk about, learn about, and think about on your Saturday morning hustle.
Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means, the Saturday morning hustle. You're behind the scenes, the making of, recording of the Saturday morning hustle podcast. Of course, I'm repping the Entrepreneur AF t-shirt today, the newest piece of the swag we got on SaturdayMorningHustle.com. So I'm going to try to do 10, 15 minutes today on two ideas, traditional ideas, long-standing ideas that can actually be adapted and adopted for self-brand and personal branding today, which use a lot for influencers, social media experts, and people who are utilizing new media and non-traditional approaches to creating brand and the brand identity and then value behind that. So two traditional ideas from two traditional thinkers that we're going to spin on their head today on the podcast. So appreciate you guys tuning in to the behind the scenes videos, the making of videos, getting this little bonus footage as I get cranked up and ready to record the podcast. Of course, you want to check out the entire podcast on iTunes, Spotify, on Google Play, and the Anchor app, Podchaser, and all kinds of places you find great podcasts. With that in mind, here we go. Good morning. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means. The Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. And today I'm going to talk to you about branding and self-brand. And I'm actually going to talk about two very long-standing ideas about how things get done and how people create success for themselves. I'm going to combine them together into a modern version of self-brand or self-identity that you could utilize for your business, but you could also use for yourself as an individual. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are a business owner, if you are an artist, musician, a self-entity, a social media influencer, etc. So the two ideas both come from, ironically, people who are involved in heavy manufacturing. The first one comes from Mr. Harley Davidson, yes, the man who made motorcycles, and the second one comes from Mr. Henry Ford, of course, the man who made cars, made the Ford brand of cars, and completely changed how we manufacture. So we're going to start with the first quote from Mr. Harley Davidson, which is, when writing the story of your life, don't let anyone else hold the pen. So obviously what Mr. Davidson was talking about was you should write your own story. You should tell your own story. And the way that you do that is to pronounce to the world who you are, what you're all about, what you stand for, what you don't stand for, what you're for, what you're against, and the value proposition that you have as an individual and as a brand. Too many people feel self-conscious about this. Too many people feel braggadocious or feel like they're making outlandish statements or trying to attract attention to themselves unwarranted or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you don't write your story, someone else will. People will make assumptions about you based on what little they know about you if you do not communicate with them, if you do not share with people, if you do not allow people to understand your thought process, what you're trying to achieve, what you have achieved, what you're trying to build, what your self-brand is. If you do not share this with people, they will have to assume what it is and they will make up their own version. Their version is never as good as or as correct as you want it to be and you need it to be if you're trying to build a strong self-brand for yourself, or a self-brand or brand around you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or as a top-notch professional, or a self-brand if you're an artist, musician, a social media influencer, etc. So don't let other people write the story. Don't let them hold the pen. You tell your story by demonstrating. You tell people what you're about, and you back it up with action. You demonstrate what your values are, what your expertise is, the value you create for other people through your product or service, through your actions, the things that you do, back up the things you say. And so when you tell people your story, it's not any of those negative thoughts. It's always a positive thought if you can back it up with actions. If you tell people that you're an entrepreneur, that you're a business builder, that you create something from nothing, it's one thing to say it, you have to be able to do it. You have to show people the actual proof of that labor. If you can, then you back that up. Now you're writing your own story and they're going to believe it. A little bonus quote for you here is the Maya Angelou quote. When people tell you who they are, believe them the first time. If people take you at your word, if people believe you when you tell them who you are in a self-brand way, and then you can prove it, back it up with your experience, with your achievements, with the proof of your work. If you tell people you're an entrepreneur, you need to show them your business. Show them what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, what you're doing in the future. If you're an artist, present your work. Do not hold it to yourself. Too many artists want to tuck those paintings and drawings away and not share them with people. If you're a songwriter, if you're an actor, if you're doing something completely different than one's seen before, you have to do it. You have to share it with people. You have to be understanding that not everyone will appreciate it. Not everyone will give you the perfect credit for it that you're looking for, but you'll never get any of it if you don't share with others. Share it so that you can take the feedback, you can take the connection that you create, and take the understanding that not everything wins and not everything loses. It's not a win-loss scenario. It's not a 100% in, 100% out. It's working through the process. It's demonstrating your ability to work through the process to get from point A to point B in the variables that come along with running a business or creating something from scratch, whether it's artistic or business or structure-wise, and being able to adapt to the situation, make something successful. That's how success is created. You have to be a part of that process. You have to show people that you are doing something. You have to understand some people will be critical, some people will be supportive. Take what's positive, move it forward. Take what's negative, don't ignore it, or at least learn from it and get better from it. Take your small losses to make big victories, etc., etc. So you have to put yourself out there. You have to tell people what you're trying to achieve, who you are as an individual, as a brand, and then let that stand up to scrutiny via your work, your product, the end process of what you're doing. So write your own history, tell your own story. You hold the pen. Don't let other people do it for you by having to assume because they don't know enough about what it is you're doing. Don't hold these ideas. Don't hold your thoughts. Don't hold your next big thing back. Put it out in the world. Put it up to scrutiny. Let that feedback, let that information, let that the great successes and the minor setbacks and even the great setbacks inform you on how to move forward. Your ability to do that will eventually be your success. So you can write your own history, you can write your own story if you're holding the pen, if you're running the process. You have to start the process. You can't be afraid of what other people will think or say. And tell them who you are, hope that they believe you the first time, like Maya Angelou says. Now, interesting thought. If you guys have seen Hamilton lately, if it's on Disney Plus, if you haven't seen it in the theater, you've seen it in the theater, you all know what we're talking about. Hamilton and his lifelong adversary, William Burr, Hamilton was also at great odds with Thomas Jefferson, and ultimately Hamilton sided with Jefferson over Burr, even though he disagreed with him completely, because at least he understood what Jefferson stood for, and he said Burr never stood for anything, and therefore he had no respect for him. So always stand for something, express it, and write your own story. So the second quote from Mr. Henry Ford, whenever, see, I already screwed it up. All right, here it goes again. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Stop and think about that. It's all about attitude and confidence. If you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right. Self-doubt is a great sabotager of success. So if you think you can, then you will start. If you start the process, the ability to achieve successful outcome is much higher, completely higher, than if you doubt yourself and never start. You have to start if you're going to be successful. We just talked about the fact that everything has to go through a process. There'll be highs and lows, ups and downs, and things that get you from point A to point Z and everything in between. But you have to take that first step. You have to start. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have the confidence, the positive attitude, and the gumption, the initiative to begin, to start. That comes from believing in yourself. If you have self-doubt, if you believe you can't, which means you won't, then there'll be no success that comes from that. If you tell yourself you can't and you don't do it, you might have been able to, but you'll never know, and the end result is no success. If you tell yourself you can, you start the process. Not everyone is successful at everything, but beginning the process is making much more likely to end up in a successful place than not starting the process. So, not that you can always will yourself to being successful, but you definitely can will yourself into having a positive attitude, believing in yourself, having the confidence to begin, learn through the process, and continue with it until it either finds a successful end or dead ends itself in a place where it's not actually viable. Those things happen too. At the end of the day, if you learn lessons from that, if you take information away, if you grow and develop yourself as a professional, as a critical thinker, those things that you would write off as unsuccessful or failures ultimately will lead to the thing that is successful for you if you have the right attitude and the confidence in yourself. So that's how that quote works. So back to Mr. Harley Davidson said, you should write your own story. Tell people what it is you're achieving, what your ideas are, what your goals are, what your motivation is, where you're coming from, what you're doing, why you're the person to do it, what it is about you, your drive, your determination, your passion, how you're connected to it. Tell people these things. It is not bragging if you can back it up. That's the key to this. Tell people what you're trying to do. Tell them why you're doing it, why it's important, why you're the person for the job, why this brand makes sense to you, why the things that you're doing are the things you're doing, and then let them decide if they appreciate that or not, as opposed to them having to fill in the gaps or make up their own version of what it is you're doing. And you follow that up by what Mr. Ford said, if you believe in yourself, you have the ability to achieve it. If you believe you can't, you definitely won't. So if you want to achieve that success, if you want to actually create that career, to build that business, to be able to do that thing you want to do, you know, the other saying, the fourth saying here in the scenario here is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. If you believe you can be that guy or girl that makes that happen, that creates that business, that takes over that process, that takes that step in their career, that paints that painting, that sings that song, that does whatever it is you're trying to do. If you believe you can, the potential for you to be successful begins right there. If you believe you can't, you won't and you will not. So success comes from beginning and believing you can, having the belief in yourself to follow through, and ultimately ending up in a different place than where you started. Hopefully a successful place, even if it isn't the exact success that you were planning on paper. That happens a lot. Often, what ends up being a successful entity, whether it's a business, a career, a self-brand, isn't exactly where you started, but it is something different and better than where you started. That's what you would call success. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to start here and I have to get here. It's I'm going to start here, I'm going to go somewhere different, and the new place I end up is a better place with something I have passion for that I can continue to build upon and continue to move forward. If you're doing that, that's success. The achievement of it has to be a specific job title, it has to be a specific amount of money, it has to be the ability to travel the world. Other entities, other items on a list you won't get all those things on your list. Those things won't happen the way you expect them to. It's the success. It's not you, it's not me, it's all of us. That's how it happens to everyone, but you have to be open to the process. If you have the right attitude, you will get to somewhere better, and you will continue that process to get better and better and better and better to ultimate goals. That's the key. Ultimate goal of achieving the success of being able to take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of loved ones, take care of your community, to give back, to create other opportunities, and create another cycle of success. That's the ultimate definition of success. It's not dollars and cents numbers. It's not a title within a certain amount of time, etc. It's starting the process because you believe in yourself, working through the process, following and staying with it, and then taking it ultimately where success leads you, not where you designated success was. See how that works? So these are two very traditional thought processes with two bonus ideas thrown in the middle of all that now equate to how you you can develop the strategy behind a self-brand or a modern brand, whether it's as an individual, as an influencer, as an entrepreneur, or someone running a business or leading a career path. By everyone who knows you, does business with you, associates with you, understanding who you are because you wrote that story, and seeing the merits of your work because you had the belief in yourself to start from the beginning. Once you began, you started the process, you end up being successful. That's how that works. So, as always, check out all the social media posts. Hit me up. Let me know what you think on social media. Tell me what you like, dislike, what you want to hear more of, less of, etc. We'll see you next Saturday on the Saturday Morning Hustle. Until then, have a great week. We'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Hustle. Boom. All right. 1440 on the mic. 15 minutes here on video. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make comments below. Like, dislike what you're hearing more of. Check out the hashtag Saturday Morning Hustle. See you next week.